Public Safety and Justice Affairs Committee meeting this Tuesday, September 20th. Roll call, please.
And just as a reminder to all who are in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Ms. Conwell.
Present.
Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Welcome, Mr. Miller. Public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one is signed in.
Thank you. In your packets, committee, you'll find the July 26th meeting minutes. If they're in order, I'll accept the motion in a second.
I'll make the motion.
So move. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you. 2022-0259.
Resolution number 2022-0259, awarding a total sum not to exceed $225,000 to Baldwin Wallace University for the Northeast Ohio Flight Information Exchange Digital Infrastructure for Drone Services Project from the District 2 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Who do we have to speak? Please come forward. Hit the button on the microphone. It'll turn green, I believe. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stuart Mendel. I'm the affiliate faculty person in charge of Technology Partnership Initiative at Baldwin Wallace University. I brought with me one of my colleagues who's the dean of the graduate school and the research program. And the work that I want to talk to you about involves drones and establishing a footprint in Greater Cleveland for the drone industry. Interestingly enough, the people that get this the best are the public safety and emergency preparedness and first responder community, which is probably why we're before this committee. And I have a few bullet points, and then maybe if we could, if you have any questions, I'd be thrilled to answer them. So we consider this project called the Northeastern Ohio Flight Information Exchange to be vital infrastructure. One of the reasons it's vital is because basically the idea is to take data on flights and put it in a central location and as part of a central sharing concept for people that want to use them, but also public agencies such as the FAA, which have to regulate flights. The work that I'm describing came out of organizing the Aerozone District. I was the founder of the organization, and with funding that was provided by the county, I think we have a really good organization there that's created a strategic plan for the district. So this concept is one that we wanted to center around the airport, but also to include all of Cuyahoga County's air facilities. And the good news is the country itself as a whole is not well organized in this area. So Cleveland and Cuyahoga County would be one of the knowledge centers, maybe the originators of these concepts. So to pull it off, we have a partner that does this very work. They use the internet and the World Wide Web to create infrastructure that it's available to the public for no cost. And the concept is that if it's available, particularly to municipalities, they'll create safer communities in the most cost-effective way. And I noticed there are some public safety officials here. Perhaps they would weigh in after we're all done. But one of the reasons to want to focus on responsible drone use is because of the ability to be eyes in the sky. One of the stories that I've been told about its validity and impact has to do with being able to survey a scene before actually having a personnel show up on the ground and encounter something that they didn't anticipate. I hear that a lot from both firefighters and the police. So we consider this infrastructure, and that's the way we're pitching it. We also think it's a public-private partnership in the truest sense, because if the county is the first, provider of the resources in the region, we know that the private industries that rely on drone use will support it. And maybe the obvious examples are Amazon and Walmart. They use drone to deliver packages. That trend is increasing. It's creating a complex flight environment, which is another reason to focus on creating safe conditions in the region. So part of the funding sustainability model is that once it's up and going, and we should know very quickly what the returns on the investment will be, because the database will be available freely, and then we're in conversation with private sector users of it, who we expect at some point to sponsor parts of the maintenance. Okay, so the reason, again, to focus specifically on public safety is that I came to Baldwin-Wallace from the Aerosol Alliance, but before that I was at Cleveland State. I was the assistant dean of the College of Urban Affairs, and under my responsibilities were the Emergency Preparedness Research Center, which has a database of 6,500 active adherence followers, which we're able to use through our partnership with them. And our launch of the program will use social media and messaging and word of mouth, but also kind of the network that we've established to quickly get attention for the project and participation. Then just going down my bullets, I think the concept is intended to grow, because once one creates the conditions through infrastructure, it creates business opportunities. And the goal is to create an economic development cluster around drone manufacture, drone repair, drone education, drone flights, and public sector policy. Along those lines, I've had a conversation or two with the FAA, and they're interested in what Cuyahoga County would be doing in this regard to advise their thinking. So that's kind of the quick return or explanation. If you had any questions, I'd be thrilled. If you'd want to know anything about Baldwin-Wallace and its support, I have an expert here for that.
Thank you. I'll turn to Mr. Miller, who is the sponsor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and my colleagues. I strongly support this program and urge my colleagues to support it as well. The basic idea is to set up a flight information traffic control system for drones, and if we set up this infrastructure, it will catalyze the growth of the drone industry in greater Cleveland. So it has great economic development potential, and it'll also contribute to public safety by enabling those who fly drones to know where it's safe to go and where it's not. And so that's what the purpose of it is. And we already have commitments from some of the operators in the industry that they believe in the model, that once we set up the infrastructure, that they'll be willing to share in the cost of the ongoing maintenance of the system. And the system that we're proposing to build in Greater Cleveland is very similar to a program that's currently in operation in Virginia, and we're going to be working with the same operator to set it up here. So that's the summary of it, and I acknowledge that it is a somewhat speculative undertaking, but I believe that government should be willing to take some risks and do some new things to promote economic development and to help make our community a leader, and this proposal will contribute to that, and I ask for the support of the committee. Thank you.
Mr. Miller, and I'd like to thank Mr. Miller. I sat through a presentation and thought that, yes, indeed, this is an interesting concept and probably something that is upon us as opposed to going to be upon us. So I applaud Mr. Miller in bringing this forward. Are there further questions? Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair, I noticed that the legislation said that you started, that the project would be started August 2022. With the other funds, has that already, has it started?
Well, yes, Baldwin Wallace gave us a small grant to start the website, and we've already done preparations with launching, no pun intended, the rest of the initiative upon receipt of the rest of the funds.
And this is a countywide
Yes,
initiative?
yes.
Okay, and how are students involved?
Well, that's part of what we're developing. So on campus, we're interested in some research aspects of developing public policy. And there's a political science program. There's students engaged in helping us draft public policy concepts, opinion papers, things like that. There's also an engineering program at Baldwin Wallace, and some of the mechanical engineering involves creating stuff for, I'm not, not an engineer, I don't know how to explain it, but it has to do with technology transfer. So some of the technology that we're relying on will come out of NASA Glenn. There's some work that we've been doing and involving them. And in fact, I'm glad the councilman mentioned it. We had 16 sponsors to support our proposal. And NASA was one of them. The Ohio Aerospace was another. There are 4 or 5 companies in there that are interested in Cuyahoga County as a locus for their work that are not here now. What did I leave out? So my colleagues at Cleveland State, I mean, there's a long stakeholder group.
Okay, and can you send me the presentation? I apologize, I didn't see it. And I guess my final question is, where do you plan on getting the remainder of the startup funds?
Right. So the good news is once we develop put the wheels together, the frame, so to speak, we're quite confident the private sector players will engage, just because this is rare nationally. We're actually ahead of the curve in trying to organize this, and the university is in a central place to be kind of what I would call an unbiased broker, a trusted source. So we expect that the private industry will support and match more than a one-to-one match the funding.
Okay, and so you requested initially 450 from District 2. You got half that. Did the administration assist in any way?
You mean the county administration? No, but we have not approached them.
You didn't approach?
We did not approach them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Conwell asked the majority of my questions, but it is really a very interesting concept. So just to repeat what I think I've heard, this is like an air traffic control type system, so you would help them navigate safely within the community.
Right. Well, that's part of it, but yeah. I mean, I think the way that we want to start is something that people understand,
Okay.
and that's pretty obvious, and it's a need. It's an emergent and urgent need. Then there's all the other cool stuff that comes out of it: cargo, using of drones for bigger and different purposes, technology, material science, all sorts of applications. And ultimately, the idea is to create a density of jobs, a job opportunity, technology-related jobs.
What's some of the problems that that let you know that there was a need for this?
Well, the federal government, actually. So the FAA has been charged with regulating drone use, and they don't know how to do it. And they're asking for help. So I really think this is a tip of the iceberg type of concept. If we're early, we'll be one of the trusted sources, and we'll get resources for that.
Okay. So you mentioned not only, for lack of a better term, air traffic control, the infrastructure. You mentioned there were other things, drones themselves, or what other things?
Well, before this meeting, we had several meetings with local officials. One of them was the mayor of Strongsville, I believe, who has a parking lot, and he thought, well, could we use that for drone testing? And of course, and if you think about the areas in greater Cleveland where there's a big flat open space and no impediments, there are quite a few. it's a matter, I think, of organizing it around a central concept. So that's one example. But the thing that gets everyone, I believe, really excited is the concept of cargo. If we go down that road, I mean, we're here for public safety, but in terms of what a drone can move, if you think about what NASA is doing with the project to Mars, they're moving very heavy objects with drones, essentially. And right now, I think a drone can lift a pickup truck. But what if it could lift a container from an ocean-going vessel? Then there'd be no need for a bridge to Canada or a railroad line dedicated to Norfolk, Virginia. And those are real observations and wishes. So the next generation of these drones will have enhanced capacity. And we really would like to concentrate that here and not in Silicon Valley or Massachusetts or,
Interesting, because I had not considered, when I think drone, I think something small.
right.
Toy-like almost. You're saying you could potentially lift a,
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's dramatic, and the fact that there are material sciences that go into it, because they have to be strong but lightweight. Then there's manufacturing those things and repairing them, training people to use them. All of that, we believe, will grow out of this initiative.
as the potential industry that could come as
Yeah.
a result of this.
Economic development cluster. But we want to start with public safety officials, because as I mentioned when I started, those are the folks that are using this now in an impactful way, and they get it. They get it.
How does the fire,
So the examples that have been given to me is that they receive an emergency call before physical people can be on the scene. They can send up a drone to survey the situation so they know what kind of equipment and maybe where to approach the fire. The same thing with emergency situations using rescue calls. And certainly you've seen the drones with the hurricanes and the flooding and all those kind of natural disaster types of things. Then another commercial use that I didn't really mention has to do with inspecting cell phone towers, public sector utilities. I mean, the sewer district uses drones, metro parks use drones, the Port Authority use drones. So it's, and it's unregulated. The rules are very simple. It's over 400 feet high and you have to have a pilot's license. And under 400 feet, you have to have some kind of training, but it's not regulated.
well, I appreciate it. Thank you. I don't have any other questions, but I'll just say this. It reminds me of that movie from 10 to 15 years ago, The Minority Report. And they had drones that, like for fires, they go in and see people in the house on fire, or, and for criminal investigations. So it looks like the future is here.
Indeed, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for being, oops, question. Right here. So I've seen the drones be used for safety purposes. In Parma, they've demonstrated, some of the drone uses that the police use and looking for people on the run and things like that, and sending the drones out into woods that might put officers into dangerous situations if they didn't have them. So the technology is certainly there. So as far as the infrastructure goes, have you had, or your organization had, discussions with local governments? You mentioned Mayor Perchiak in Strongsville. So as far as the infrastructure being set up, would that require approval by local government, or is this an FAA thing,
It's both.
usurping that?
It's both. So there's all the levels of government, including the state of Ohio, are interested in this kind of work. So part of our initiative will be to communicate with them and follow up as we develop our website and our social media and the content and the knowledge. It's interesting. I did a presentation before the Mayors and Managers Association, and many got it. Others were thinking like Council President, where, well, these are toys. And I only had an hour.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work to be done there. But I think the businesses that rely on drones are very attentive to this. And my sense is that It is a public-private partnership. It is, first dollars in will get recognition and a validation of the whole concept that this is a legitimate, worthy effort.
So whenever there's new technology, and Council President kind of alluded to this, there's always a lot of gray area and a lot of room for development and such. So do you anticipate working with other organizations? I mean, you mentioned maybe like NASA or so, because I'll be honest with you, I was thinking like the Council President in terms of the small the drones we see flying around in people's backyards. But you mentioned being able to like actually physically lift cargo off of a ship. They make, I know like in the Middle East when they're shooting down terrorists and stuff, I get that. But so they have the capability to do stuff like that as well?
Well, the military applications are way ahead of ours, and we're talking about commercial drone use. But yes, that's absolutely the case.
So how many, if you had an estimate, a guesstimate, let's put it that way, how many years off would something like that be? Like
4 or 5.
Oh, that close?
Oh, yeah.
Not
Yeah.
20, 30, you're talking 4 or 5?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and nationally, we're not organized, and so there's catch-up. There's other very interesting applications, too. My colleague has can tell you about a relationship with Metro Health. We'd like to have a conversation with them about, using drones to deliver meds and create more equitable opportunities in that neighborhood there. And that's all early. That's all an early concept. The other has to do with big data. And I talked to the sewer district people about this in particular. When they take photos to inspect their facilities, it creates these huge files that have to go somewhere. And right now, it's beyond my comprehension to explain terabytes, petabytes, but it's not managed. The Cleveland Clinic is doing something like that with IBM, but that's it. And, us mere mortals are really outside the fence on this, and we really want to catch up.
Oh, well, it seems like it's very cutting edge, and it's nice that Cuyahoga County could be at the forefront of something like this. And like you said, why should, some other region have the ability to do this when we are completely capable, have outstanding facilities like BW and other institutions here? So thank you.
Thank you. Yep, yes, sir.
How long do you think it will take to fully flesh out what what it looks like, in terms of the air traffic control?
Right, so we have a plan. It's a 2-year plan. That's why we asked for 2 years' worth of funding.
Okay.
But we should be able to show some results starting in about 90 days. As I said, the raw part of the website's already developed. As soon as I get the word, I'll work with my colleagues, and we'll jump in a more robust manner. So it'll be fast. It'll be
I'm starting to see it now. Obviously, it's a safety component right now, and you're going to be focusing on just making sure they don't crash into each other. Is that what it means? So
or pose hazards, or, so we didn't talk about cybersecurity. I mean, there's all sorts of applications to this. There's, spying, there's using them as weapons. There's all sorts of applications that have to be legislated and managed. And right now, it's the Wild West.
So, right, so once it goes beyond just safety, but into the economic component, the next question is who controls this? Is there a board? Will this be physically located on Baldwin Wallace campus?
I think we got to figure that out. I mean, what we probably do is part of what our work is going to be is develop this public policy milieu. And we want to advise the FAA to be able to say this is the standard for the country. So yes, I think there would be, but I couldn't tell you what it is right now.
So once you have, after 2 years, you've developed the technology. Let's assume in 2 years it's fully developed. What happens after that?
Well, I expect it to sustain itself because the private industry is going to support it. So what I think you'll find is what I expect are companies locating here or forming here that wouldn't have otherwise. That'll be one indicator. I think another would be maybe testimonials we get from the public safety folks and understanding the utility of it. So I would expect that once the database is available, that's the first step. It leads to other innovations. And, we'll be reporting that directly to the county.
Thank you.
Questions? If everything's in order, I'll accept the motion for Resolution 2022-0259 to the full council for second reading.
Make a motion?
Second, can I have my name added?
Thank you.
And mine as well.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Resolution 2022-0288.
Resolution number 2022-0288, awarding a total sum not to exceed $500,000 to the City of Cleveland Heights for the security camera network replacement and expansion project from the District 10 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Back to the scene of the crime. Welcome, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much. First of all, it is wonderful to be here and to see you all. It's been too long.
Was that strange?
I was gonna say, Mr. Chair, remind him that it's crime to lie on the,
Yes, sir.
If you'd state your name and
All right. Khalil Sarin, Mayor of the City of Cleveland Heights, here to present to you a presentation on the need for additional awareness in Cleveland Heights in a variety of different places. Do I? All right. Green button. All right. So Cleveland Heights is a place where, as you see on our motto is all are welcome. And we are currently undergoing an effort to ensure that our city is a place that is conducive to business development and growth and social development and growth, especially coming out of, as we continue to claw our way out of the pandemic. We are seeking ways to bring people together in our parks, in our business districts, in order to make sure that our businesses are healthy and that our people are healthy. But in order to create an environment that is conducive to that kind of health and that kind of development, we need a safe place. And one of the ways that we address security in this age is through greater awareness. And so what we're asking for is support in updating and expanding our network of cameras through our business districts and through our parks in order to ensure that the people that live in and visit Cleveland Heights are more secure, both in terms of a deterrent and in terms of finding out what happened when something goes wrong. So this resolution is a request for support from Cuyahoga County Council, for a project that we have in place that we're working on to expand our surveillance camera network in Cleveland Heights. The description is to replace our city's outdated and frankly not insufficient camera network in order to ensure that when we do have footage of crimes that have occurred, that the footage is usable, and that our camera network is sufficient to cover the places where people are at the highest risk for being victims of crime. We'd like to expand our city's surveillance camera network into our parks where currently we don't have camera coverage, and into business districts where we currently don't have camera coverage or sufficient camera coverage. And so we would expand it into our 5 of our largest parks, and add cameras along South Taylor Road in the Taylor Business District, in part in conjunction with this ongoing development project that we are working on in the Kane Park Village, Taylor Tudor area, that economic development project that will hopefully bring more and more people to that area, both as visitors and as residents. This project should last, we're hoping this year for the next couple years or sooner, depending on, we wanted to give it a little space for materials access. We know that supply chain issues are ongoing, so we wanted to give ourselves some runway to get this off the ground, knowing that there may be issues down the road in getting the materials in. So just as a bit of context here, we'd be replacing 190 outdated cameras, and these cameras are somewhere between 10 and 12 years old. And if you can think about camera technology from 10 or 12 years ago, it was great at the time, but we've got much better technology, both in terms of the resolution and in terms of storage capacity and transmission than we did 10 or 12 years ago. And so replacing those 190 cameras in our 7 commercial districts would go a long way to making sure that the footage that we're receiving is more useful, both in real-time surveillance, but also in reconstructing crimes that have taken place in those business districts.
Mr. Chair, to the mayor, I have a question about this Center Mayfield. What is there? Is that Starbucks?
No, so
Where's that?
the Center Mayfield area, it has a strip that is basically.
Is it where the
at
theater was?
It is where the theater was.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Got you.
So
Okay, so,
there's a BP gas station on one side of the intersection there.
And a tire
at
place.
Warrensville and Mayfield.
got it.
There is a Subway there. There's a State Farm Insurance Agency and a strip of commercial businesses there as well.
Okay, and then the Cedarly parking lot, is that camera's going to go in the garage and/or in the open lot?
Well, so that section of the Cedar Lee Meadowbrook area, we're currently involved in a development project at Cedar Lee and Meadowbrook, which would remove and replace that surface parking with residences and businesses, and, you know, to remove that surface parking so we would be relying on the parking structure. Yeah, so we're getting rid of some of that surface parking and developing there to fill in a hole in that business district, because right now there's a large space in that business district, sort of like a missing tooth situation in the business district there.
Do you
But
think there'll be sufficient, I mean, obviously you do, and your studies show the garage will be sufficient?
yes. And there is additional public parking just a block away as
Yeah.
well.
Okay, thanks.
So, and this would go a long way, adding and replacing those cameras in that business district would go a long way to supporting that new development as well, making sure that we're creating a safe space for people to live, work, and recreate there. in
Is
that
it going to be a
business.
multi-use development?
It will be. And then additionally, adding new cameras, 52 cameras in 5 of our parks, all throughout the city, to make sure that when people are, you know, our kids go to these parks every day, and in the environment today, we know that in part as a result of the economic and sort of emotional impact that the pandemic has had, that we are experiencing spikes in certain crimes and violent crimes and crimes of opportunity, and ensuring that we have safe places for our kids to play, for adults to enjoy our park system as well. Adding cameras to those parks means that we can monitor those parks and be on the lookout for you know, signs that some violence may occur, and which can augment our police response time and also our ability to patrol those parks with limited staffing. You know, having the ability to take a look at our parks. If we get a call, we can pull up the cameras immediately and be able to direct, you know, responses to specific locations within the parks in order to have a faster response time, and also possibly to head off conflicts before they spiral out of control as well. So in total, this would create a network of 242 cameras through business districts and our park system. which is, primarily where people congregate, where issues of violence are more likely to occur. And it would provide us with a look into these public places where we have a higher responsibility to ensure the safety of the people who live and visit Cleveland Heights. So the rationale for this, these are much needed upgrades to our camera system. As I said, the cameras are between 10 and 12 years old, and many of them are far beyond their useful life in that we're not receiving signals from some of these cameras, and sometimes the signals that we are receiving are not as useful as you might hope based on the level of resolution that the camera provides. Updating these cameras to modern technology, to current technology, will allow us to have better images that we can rely on, that will be more reliable in identifying people who are actually committing these crimes, and ensuring that we are sort of avoiding things like, mistaken identities, and that we can actually get clearer pictures of people who are committing crimes in these public places. And we have, in recent years, and I think in a result from the pandemic, experienced more violent crimes. I think this is happening region-wide, that violent crimes are spiking in certain areas, and our parks and business districts are not immune to that. And as a result, what we'd like to do is take this moment and request this assistance so that we can wholesale improve and upgrade this camera system, and then get on a regular schedule of, in a more systematic way, updating some portion of the cameras over time as part of our capital plan. But this assistance would have an immediate impact on the safety and security in an inner ring suburb that is experiencing a lot of the same problems that, say, our central city is experiencing, but doesn't necessarily have the same level of resources to address those issues.
Can I just ask what kind of cameras?
So right now, we don't have, it's a basic surveillance camera that would be protected and mounted in various places in business districts and in our parks. Right now, we have an RFP out. We haven't received all of our responses. We are anticipating potentially extending the deadline. Our deadline is the 30th of this month. So we haven't received the exact specs from the variety of vendors that may respond to this RFP. But based on our research, we have a certain estimate of what we expect this upgrade will cost. But we don't have exact specs on the cameras just yet. I do have our Director of IT, Ryan Prosser, and our Chief of Police, Chris Britton, here to phone a friend a bit if they have a bit more information on the specifics of the camera systems that we could be looking at.
And Council, I want to be mindful of time because we have,
I'm good with the answer.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Okay, so Ed, I'll speed through the rest of. I don't think we have very many more. So this obviously this will benefit all 45,000 of our residents, but also the vastly more people who drive through or visit Cleveland Heights, either visiting our parks or our business districts. Many of these locations are covered in our qualified census tracts. We have 4 qualified census tracts in the city, and including Kane Park, which in particular is a large regional draw for the concerts and shows that we hold in Kane Park, and we want to make sure that the people who are in attendance at those shows feel safe and are safer in a more secure park location when they come see those shows and concerts. So The cost that we're anticipating is around $765,000. And that would include replacing the current cameras, expanding into our parks, and adding cameras to that Kane Park Village area on South Taylor. How we anticipate sourcing the funds is, of course, this request to County Council for your assistance in building out this camera network and our own capital funds that we would contribute to the project. And that is the end of my presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, Mayor, I think it's a very worthwhile and excellent use of the ARPA funding. This is very proactive. You're looking at the safety and also lifestyle of your residents and those who come to Cleveland Heights. One question I do have is are the cameras in real time, or is it tape delay, or how does that work as far as that goes?
The camera is in real time.
So police can respond if there's something or they witness something. And just to clarify, these are all in public places. These are all in public places, no private
All in
invasion of
public
privacy, anything
places,
like that.
no intention of interrupting or involving ourselves in people's private lives, but when people are in our parks or in our business districts specifically, we want to make sure that we've covered those. We can't have police stationed at every, corner all the time. We're patrolling and we have limited staffing. But this allows us to extend our view into those public places specifically without infringing on people's privacy.
Right. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
I have several, but I'm just going to do one major. You touched on it, Mayor. Is your police department fully staffed?
So there's a complex answer to that. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about what fully staffed means precisely, and I don't think that we have a precise definition of that staffing. What I do know is that we do not have enough staff to do some of the things that we've done in the past. So there's the car patrols, which, address our whole city. And most of our staffing is devoted to patrolling the city and ensuring that we have coverage throughout the city. But our level of staffing right now does not allow us to have dedicated park patrols or bike patrols through our parks or, walking beats through our business districts. And that's another reason why having these cameras in place will go a long way to increasing the security while we ramp up staffing in order to be able to bring back the beat cops in our business districts and the bike cops in our neighborhoods and parks.
So the infrastructure that's going to be part of the project will be at Cleveland Heights Police Department so they can actually view this in real time.
Absolutely. View it in real
I think
time.
this is a good project for every city to probably have thought about.
Just one question to follow up on that. Do you have a sense in terms of dollars what the overhead is, not overhead, brain having a senior moment. Once you purchase the cameras, the cost of operating the cameras on a regular basis?
The ongoing maintenance, that I would have to defer. If we have any estimate of what our ongoing maintenance costs might be, Director Prosser, if you could.
Come up and say your name
State
first.
your name.
Yeah. And the heart of my question is to where Councilman Conwell was going, with every city should have that. I was a part of a group before I was elected official who raised money for a camera in our neighborhood because of a death that had happened. And we got the money, we installed the cameras into a commercial district on Central Avenue in Cleveland, and then another death occurred. And then we went running to check the camera, and come to find out the local police were not using their operating costs to operate our camera. So that was an educational moment for me. So that's the heart of the question. With this increase in cameras, what does the overhead cost look like, operating costs look like?
Hello, I'm Ryan Prosser. I'm the IT director for the City of Cleveland Heights. Thank you, Council, for having me. To answer your question, I estimate an operating budget of a few $1,000s to maintain the equipment, especially initially the first a couple of years, there shouldn't be too much going on. All these units are housed away from the reach of people or vehicles or things that could cause damage to the system. And typically, they just kind of run on their own. There isn't too much constant maintenance that needs to happen once the initial configuration is done.
Thank you.
My other question, which I think is important as well, because I relate to what Councilman Jones said. You know, sometimes your cities aren't really looking at them. So we have cameras, neighbors feel safe, but they're not really being utilized. So these pictures, are they permissible in court?
So, yeah, I believe similar to our body cam footage, these would be public record. As I said, they would be in public locations, and they could be used in court to the degree that they would be compelling in court, and they would be public records as well, in the same way that body cam footage is, or the current, surveillance footage is that we have now.
My other concern is Kane Park is very big, and it's a lot of foliage and trees. So roughly how many are, I know you said 60,000 for that, but roughly how many cameras do you think is going to fill that?
I might have to go back and see if we have that on the, I'm not sure if we do have that on an estimate of how many cameras we need in Kane Park specifically, but I will say this, we do have, let's see.
I would assume quite a few.
Thank you. So I will try to get back to the park section. It looks like an estimate maybe of 9 or 10 cameras in Kane Park, and I could be wrong about that. Is that approximate, correct? Yeah. Okay. But additionally, and this is an ongoing maintenance issue in Kane Park, we are undertaking a process to increase and improve the view sheds into Kane Park, thinning out underbrush in order to make sure that people can see around corners as they're walking down the paths, these sorts of things. So it's a multi-pronged security approach to make the place more comfortable and safe for the people enjoying it. And the cameras would be a piece of that, but not the only piece.
Thank you.
And additionally, related to the ongoing maintenance, I am committed, and I believe that the city administration will be committed in an ongoing way to a systematic maintenance and upgrade of these cameras in a staged way, so that we're not, needing to come back for more assistance from other levels of government over time, but instead putting it as a regular piece of our capital investment in order to systematically improve the camera network as time goes on.
Seeing no further questions, I'll accept the motion for Resolution 2022-0288 for second reading.
So moved.
And
Second, any further discussion? All
I'd
in
like to add
favor?
my name.
I,
Add Mr. Jones's name,
please add my name as well.
Tuma, Mr. Gallagher,
I'll
Ms.
add my name.
Simon, Ms. Conwell. Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Mayor, great seeing you.
Great to see you too. Thank you.
I think he's the
actually-
sharpest dressed mayor we've seen so far.
Actually, out
appreciate
in
that, sir.
Strongsville, we used one of these. We had an autistic kid got out, and they had to put the drones up, and unfortunately, they found the child floating in a pool. But they would have been looking for days. They would have never found the poor thing. So this is a great technology, and again, don't be a stranger.
Thank you. I will.
And to your new police chief, hello, I used to work with your former chief with some Humane Society stuff with some cats, so we're continuing that.
Thank you, Mayor.
FYI, bye.
Under discussion, we have update from the Sheriff's Department regarding the jail. As we have been notified, the number keeps creeping higher. I think we were over 1,700 last week. I don't know where we're at now. But there also has been raised concerns regarding the contract with the City of Cleveland and the City of Cleveland prisoners. Sounds to me like we have a multi-pronged problem, ongoing problem that we're certainly trying to deal with discussions on a new jail. But I think we need on-the-ground updates to tell us where we're at with the existing jail and the concerns that those that run the jail, work in the jail, and administer to the jail, and the prisoners and our workers there have to tell us. Sheriff?
Good afternoon, Council. I've asked the two subject matter experts to present the appropriate information so you have a thorough and comprehensive understanding. Behind me is Director Rhonda Gibson, and also our Fiscal Director, Donna Khalil. We also have a representative from the Law Department in case there's any legal questions concerning the contracts.
Do you have a preference?
Welcome, Ward.
I'm fabulous. How are you?
Oh, then we could go home.
Great. Good afternoon. Rhonda Gibson, Administrator of Corrections for the Sheriff's Department. And I have a presentation prepared. It's an updated presentation from the one I gave previously. Do you wish for me to start, or would you like Cleveland discussion or fiscal discussion?
Well, I'm going to let you decide.
Okay. All right. Then I'm going first.
Okay?
Okay. All right. So, button, right? The big green button. There we go. Okay. So just to reiterate what I have said before, current jail facts are we're one of the biggest jails in the state of Ohio as far as a full-service jail. We have a rated capacity of 1,880 beds. Not all of those are able to be utilized, but that is our rated capacity by the Bureau of Adult Detention. We have two buildings, as everyone knows, which is connected by a bridge. In Jail 1, we have 877 beds, which are considered cells, and we also have 424 beds, which are dorm, for a total of 1,301 beds in Jail 1. Jail 2 has 472 beds, which are cells, and then we also have 107 beds in 3 dormitories for a total of 579 beds. I will stipulate that there are times that we need to double cell because of our population and because of our classification.
Mr. Chairman. To Chief Gibson, what is the capacity if just counting the ones that are currently operational and in service?
We would be looking at closer to 1,600, 1,650 beds.
Okay, thank you.
I added some data related to average daily population. Our data analysts put together this graph, and it starts January 2021 with our average daily population for that month at 1,343. As we go to current, for the month of September so far, we are at 1,690 inmates average population for the month. January 21 was our lowest month in this look back. May 2022 was our highest month at 1,722 average daily population for that month. So what do the numbers mean to you? Assuming we could utilize all the beds in our rated capacity, a jail should, best practice, function at an 80 to 85% capacity. Factoring 1,880 at 85% capacity, that means you should typically have 1,598 inmates to appropriately classify your inmates. At 80%, that would be 1,504 beds filled. So as of September 19th, we were at 1,681. It's important to note that we still have not lifted all of the booking restrictions that we put in place at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. This is a large number of individuals that the suburb courts have not been able to sentence to us for nonviolent offenses. The suburb courts have been understanding, but they also have what they need to do, and sometimes that involves putting people in jail. And our doors are not open to that as of yet.
Mr. Chair, just quickly, when are the doors going to open? I mean, at some point, just get back to us with that, because these questions are being asked of the police departments in my communities and the judges.
Understood. Sheriff Hammond and I have already started some discussions about ideas to be proposed with the county executive's office so that we can do something at least to start rolling. I don't have the answers as of yet, but we are kicking some ideas.
From some of the municipal courts, and yes, they are pushing hard. And just for clarification, if a defendant is sentenced under state code, they become our responsibility. So if the courts decided to start sentencing all of them under state code, they all become our responsibility. So we're looking for some alternative housing for our inmates, and we're in the preliminary stages, but I know they're pushing hard.
Oh, yeah, too bad we lost the Euclid jail, huh?
Is there any, Chief Hammond, Chairman, is there any top-level conversations going on yet with everyone as far as the cities, your administration? Has there yet been an effort to communicate? Because like, as you said, we take who we're required to take, and so we don't fully control the population within the jail. But
That's
those
absolutely correct.
That do, is there any conversation? Because I was ecstatic when I saw the numbers coming down to under 1,000, and then I went to my community meetings and realized, as successful as we were on our end, there was an incredible problem at the city level. So now I had to say, okay, look at it from a bigger picture. So that means a wider conversation. Has there ever been any effort to hold those type of conversations, to bring everyone in the same room and say, how do we as one system, organically work together to be effective?
Not in recent years. Since the pandemic, there hasn't been any real discussions because we've had this agreement that we've enforced, and until recently, those municipalities haven't really pushed hard. Now they're starting to push hard, and I've been around for 35 years, and the county jail was always over 2,000. And if it reverts back to municipalities charging their inmates misdemeanors under state code, we're going to have to come up with some innovative plans, because we don't have the capacity at the county jail right now to accommodate all those inmates. So it's going to be on us. It could affect our budget dramatically, because it's going to be our responsibility to pay for their housing costs. So there's going to have to be some conversations, to your point.
Criminal justice reform has been on our lips for the 10 years I've been here. But what does it look like? What does it mean? When does it happen?
And there's several components, several talking points. We got some that work. We got the bail reform. We're working on the center over on 55th, where we're diversion center. We're diverting low-level nonviolent defendants there. We're working on a lot of things, but no one plan that anyone's come up with is going to alleviate this challenge of where to house these inmates.
Mr. Chair, on that point, on Councilman Jones' point, I was wondering, are the suburbs, the diversion center been opened up for the suburbs to attend?
You know, I'm not sure. As of last week, there were about 5 or 6 inmates there. One of the challenges with the diversion center is it's not a lockdown facility. If you don't want to be there, you can walk away. So that's one of the challenges, and I can't speak for the judges. That may be one of their apprehensions about overusing it.
But that's what the diversion center was created for.
Yes.
When they picked them up, to give them a choice if they'd rather go to the diversion center and try to get help with because we're talking about low-level offenders, drug and alcohol and mental health is usually the ones that go. So why are we, I just think it needs to be a conversation with the suburbs. I know we were opening it up to scale. Just wondered if it had gotten there that they need to do that. If they walk away,
And I, to be perfectly direct with you, I'm not sure how frequently the municipal judges are using it. That's, as to the president's point, we're going to have a comprehensive discussion involving all the municipalities and of course us to try and find out if there's any other alternatives. Central booking, we're partially up and running, but once it's fully up and running, we do believe that process itself will expedite the booking and release of nonviolent low-level violators. I think that's going to be our biggest weapon against overcrowding.
Mr. President, I think that's what we should have a steering committee on.
And I knew this was going to be a multi-layered discussion, and not just today. We'll be bringing these people back. But the diversion center is at the point of whether or not they're going to be arrested. Police make the call, not the judge. They have a determination whether they're going to charge them or not. The thing that's going to save our bacon is 24-hour booking, which we don't have. We have, I don't know what you could call it, but it's not 24/7 booking. Once we get 24/7 booking, not only they get booked in, they get an attorney, they have a hearing, they have an evaluation, and that's where the rubber meets the road. On the issue of charging under the state law, that happened up in Toledo, where the city of Toledo basically charged everybody under the state law so they didn't have to have a jail. Well, when you do that, I mean, there's a negative to the county and there's a negative to the Muni Court. Basically, you don't need a Muni Court then. And if you're going to do that, they lose the money. So they're going to send people, send them downtown, they're going to lose the money for that case. So there's a fine line. I think the state legislature has to get involved here. I think they will. There's a little gamesmanship, and that started in Toledo, and it's not helpful for the county. It's not helpful for the people that are caught up in the system, and it's a huge negative. If it gets, the way I see it, and I may be wrong, you're looking at a Warrensville workhouse scenario again, which we're trying to avoid. But because the Muni Courts in Toledo, the main Muni Court actually, not all of them were doing that. It was just a political gamesmanship maneuver, and they were right. They could charge under state law, but then that goes back to the county as far as funds. It's a complete negative for the county, and it's a complete negative for the individual. So that's something that we're going to have to get over and deal with. But if push comes to shove, we're not going to be building a new jail. Also, we'll be building a Warrensville workhouse type scenario, which again, we're going backwards, not forward. So Sorry to interrupt. I want
That's
you to get
okay.
as much as you can. We'll get you to, if you go to quarter till, I want to give Don at least 15 minutes on the issue with the Cleveland contract. But,
And there is case law, that Toledo case, I believe there's case
Right.
law on that.
right, so it's something where you have to work together with the muni courts.
Right. And Councilwoman Conwell, I hope I didn't confuse you. Councilman Gallagher is absolutely right. Officers who make the arrest or the detainment have discretion as to whether or not they go to the Virgin Center or to our jail. We have 24-hour intake, as the councilman said, but we don't really have 24-hour central booking. It processes them through from booking to release, so he's absolutely right.
So to talk about some challenges with the existing jail, and I'll move through this quickly because we talk about this frequently, but medical, mental health, and special housing is of need within our existing facility. We are fortunate that we did get one safety cell with the new central booking renovation. We have limited ability to segregate inmates for disciplinary reasons. As you may or may not know, through the COVID pandemic, the type of inmate that has stayed in custody has been your higher level security individuals. So they have been slowly stacking over time. And so instead of having a jail that has some of your very low level individuals mixed with your medium, mixed with your higher classification, on the majority, we have the higher classification inmates. And the jail was not designed to hold that many type of individuals. We have many exits from our jail facility, which is difficult to maintain security for. Elevators have been an ongoing issue for us. It slows our staff's response to critical incidents or medical emergencies. We have established workarounds for such issues, but in a different type of facility, we could address some of that. We do have a pending elevator renovation project in progress, but that is not slated for completion until next year. We have many existing blind spots in our facility. This becomes difficult if we're doing an investigation for a critical event in an area that we just don't have the camera coverage to be able to investigate it properly. Other current challenges, as everyone is aware, we have some minimum jail standards that we're not able to meet. Natural lighting, two-way communications, specifically in Jail 1. Other challenges result from if we are in situations where we are double bunking in single cells, that automatically tips you to noncompliance associated with the number of showers, number of toilets, number of sinks, and your seating. We have limits on recreation availability in Jail 1. We have very significant staffing challenges associated with the current facility. We have many units that are small but require direct supervision. So you have a small inmate to staff ratio in a newer design. You could have bigger units but have sub-pods inside of those where one officer can essentially supervise more, and you would have rovers as opposed to small units with a larger number of staff. I have added jail access to this because this is our point of entry, our main point of entry into the jail. If you've been into the jail through jail access, you see that it's a very, very small spot. The picture on the left is the outside where you can see a professional visitor logging in to get their badge to go inside the jail. To the left of that first picture is also the tables where the bins are located. So as staff come in at shift change, which can sometimes be 75 people, they're all lined up in that hallway, which is where the general public floats as well. And then on the right is our body scanner and x-ray machine, and it becomes a funnel at shift change, unfortunately. The addition of the body scanner, of course, was a success for us because it helps to deter contraband coming into the jail. The physical age of the building is a challenge for us. Security doors are outdated, parts are sometimes difficult to acquire. We've talked about plumbing. We have done some updates as far as Public Works installing some water regulators to help in our disciplinary areas so inmates cannot just continually flush the toilets and cause flooding. Caulking around windows, security windows can be an issue. Cameras and monitors. So I've added monitors to this and added these photos to show you. The top photo is a monitor that's in our central control area. Now, central control is typically your brain of your jail, controls your exterior perimeter, egresses, ingresses, and in a more adequate central control area, you would have several monitors. You would be able to see several cameras at once and be able to flip through them pretty quickly and easily. But this is an example of one of the monitors, which is very, very outdated. The bottom photograph depicts an example of one of our housing cameras. We have many updated cameras, but we still have many that look like this and or are black and white. The system also times out from time to time. So if you're doing an investigation and there hasn't been movement, you're not catching the event itself. So what are some things that we need or we would like to accomplish with a newer facility? Staff wellness. Everybody across the world is experiencing staffing challenges. The jail is no different. We continue to have open hire events. We continue to try to think of ways to recruit more people. And despite all of that, our numbers still keep going down. It's a difficult job for people to work in corrections. For the same reason that I mentioned before, the mere makeup of our clients in custody makes it even the more difficult. If you have a large majority of people who are higher level classification, most times those are not the easiest people to contend with. So corrections staff deal with these individuals, and sometimes it's not meant for everybody. A newer facility would give the staff some dining areas specific to them, a nice dining area. This is just an example of some facilities that we toured, and that's what we have. That's what the jail staff have. We could have 20, 30 people on break at one time, and that's their break area where they can go to be away from the public. Correctional staff deal with inmates. Inmates and their families are in the Justice Center all the time. Corrections staff should have the ability to have their own separate break areas. Along with other examples of wellness for the staff, just nice areas, nice lockers, etc. Other facilities have those nice workout areas. And we don't have a workout area, and these are the locker examples. Lockers are distributed many different locations in public hallways, and as far as our contracted staff, they may or may not get lockers depending upon if we have any available. Training areas. Training is always a crux for the jail, especially when you don't have enough staff and you don't have the technology. We continue to try to think of ways to increase our technology and increase ways for staff to get training. But I don't have the staff to backfill in order for people to go to classes. But we continue to try to knock it out despite that. These are examples of training areas in some of the jails that we toured. Very, very nice, all the latest technology, and also parking. You've heard about parking, I'm sure, and jail staff is no different. While supervisors receive parking as part of their collective bargaining agreement, correction officers don't have that luxury. Correction officers do have very limited spots that are available through Public Works, but everyone else is wherever they can park. Now, this becomes particularly a challenge when there's a special event downtown, such as a Browns game. So where do the staff park if all the parking lots are taken? We try to make accommodations, but it is a common theme that we have higher call-offs on Browns games days and special events.
Have an estimate of how many spots would be needed on the worst of days, which I guess would be, say, a special event day?
I do not have that off the top of my head, Councilman. We did do a survey back during some jail design, and I can get that information for you. Okay.
Ms. Simon and I are working on a solution for that.
Okay. Medical services. What I show here is examples of what we've seen at some of the facilities that we toured, to include private assessment areas, several bays for assessment areas, dialysis stations, and also a detox unit, which was an open dorm, and medical was actually assigned with the correction officer in that unit. And here's what we have. Top left, it's an example of a provider assessment room. Very small, very limited space. Top right is an example of a staff location, basically in a corner. Bottom left, an example of a work area for medical, just not enough space, old, leaky areas, plumbing. The bottom right is actually a picture of our dispensary. As you can tell, it's a very open area, but those chairs are where inmates sit when they're being monitored, since we don't have individual private areas for them to sit in. New jail design options, some cell door mechanics, such as chutes for handcuffs and cuffs on the feet. How that's important is sometimes you have individuals that every time you open the door, they swing at the staff. And so you put some items in place, such as those where they're required to back up to the door to put the cuffs on them, both their feet and their hands. Another item is food chutes. It's common for staff when they open up a door to hand a tray to an inmate that the inmates throw food, urine, or feces at the staff. If you have some food chutes for those difficult inmates, it significantly reduces events of that. Sallyport security and space. These are examples of facilities that we went to and what we've seen. Some of those pictures are from facilities smaller than ours. One of them is a little bigger by the time they're done with their construction. But as you can see, very, very open, wide spaces. Many agencies could be inside, buses, EMS, even fire trucks into those areas. In the bottom picture, you can even see where they incorporated natural light into the Sallyport. The feeling was that it's also important for staff to have access to natural light. And this is our Sally Port that we have. The pictures do not do justice because it is actually smaller than it looks in those pictures. Becomes very, very congested, not easy to navigate with a big vehicle in that area. And there's very little staging area for inmates that are taken out of cars and waiting to be assessed to come inside the jail. Just quality of the environment. As you can see from those pictures, very lighted, bright areas for staff to work in at other facilities. Inmate housing areas, the same. Very bright, very light. Recreation areas on the left where they can actually open the door and let natural air in. And the recreation units are actually attached to each and every housing area. This gives inmates access all day long, assuming they're following the rules of what they should do in their housing unit. Top right is actually technology in the units to allow for video courts so that inmates do not have to be moved out of the unit. New technology. Top left is an example of a master control at a newer facility. It is theater staging, and I did not get permission to show the monitors on the wall, but essentially a 2-story wall with nothing but monitors. Developed like NASA so that 4 monitors can become one big monitor, or the whole wall could become one big monitor. On the right is ours. Again, the monitor in the top right is an example of one we have in master control. And then the bottom right is an example of our control panel. Very, very old, and today's technology is touch screen to open doors and close doors and activate intercoms. I went through that very fast.
Yes, you
But
did.
try to be sensitive to everyone's time.
Were you going to touch on the prisoners? Was our next presenter going to do that?
Our next one, I'm sorry.
The amount, who's in jail? How long they've been in jail? Is that, Donna, are you handling that?
So I can tell you that, yes, I've been running some data associated with inmates in custody. And this has been an ongoing conversation in our Monday afternoon meetings of our group, which Councilman Miller is a part of. Donna informed me that maybe this was a question. And what I can tell you is that the person that's been in custody the longest has been 1,760 days. The shortest is obviously 0 days. If you want.
You know what the charge is?
Yeah, so on that particular person, it's aggravated murder. So if you want a breakdown of everyone and what their charge is, that's a little more complicated report for me to get.
I think your high felonies are understandable for the time because they're a little more intricate as far as charges and defense and prosecution. But it's the ones that are at the lower end that maybe, I don't know, could be put on an ankle bracelet or something like that. I don't know who's using those or how many, but if we could have that breakout also.
Sure. So of interest, maybe, is some data reports we're just starting to put together with our data analyst. I gave a presentation yesterday afternoon to the group, the jail updates group, what that was looking like, and I'm happy to share that. I have a few questions I have to get answered that came from the group, but I'm happy to share all that. I think it'll show a lot of what you're asking for. Okay?
Questions? Okay, Donna, thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. I was told that you would have questions on the Cleveland contract, so I don't know if there's specific questions, where you want me to go with this.
Well, Well, I think if we can get an idea how many we're dealing with, how long we've been under this contract, I think that'll go to the law department.
It got signed in November of 2017.
And then we had a 2% increase per year after the first year and a half.
So the 2% increase never went into effect. So the contract got signed in November 2017. There was a 9-month transition period. And that was where, if you recall, they paid us the $5.6 million up front. And that was to cover the startup and the 9-month transition period. Then the contract read that that we could not increase the per diem until 12 months after the 9-month transition period. Now, that put us near the end of 2019. So the law department did start some communications with the city of Cleveland, and they even drafted an amendment. And now, because of COVID, that amendment would have been retroactive. The amendment that the law department drafted would have started January of 2020, but because of COVID, it didn't get sent to Cleveland until 2021. Cleveland then took that draft from the law department and they redrafted it. And theirs was much more complicated than our law department's.
Contract that they
They took, so the, Jonathan drafted an amendment to increase it to 2% and for it to be retroactive to January of 2020. Sent it to them in 21 because of, like I said, because of COVID and some communications were broken down, things like that. Then Cleveland took that amendment and they redrafted their own amendment and sent it back to Jonathan.
They understand that we're the provider and they're the customer?
I'm not in communication with them. I know Jonathan is.
Maybe there's a clause where they could do that. I don't know.
Jonathan McGraw at the County Law Department. As Donna stated, we went through a whole negotiation process, agreed to a 2% increase. We prepared a draft, sent it out to them. Apparently, there was some miscommunication from them back to me. I never received a direct communication back from the City of Cleveland until it was brought to my attention that the City of Cleveland had drafted their own version of the amendment. And like any negotiation, we can present terms, and whoever we're dealing with in any situation, they can provide back their comments, different terms. We can negotiate. But the City of Cleveland sent back an amendment that provided for the 2% increase, but also created a number of additional requirements for getting any future 2% increases, more documents that they would require.
Wasn't that deal up front, the 2%?
Correct, yes.
Are we negotiating the 2%?
The deal, because in the original contract, it did say that we are allowed to increase it by 2%
Correct.
with an amendment. It required an amendment. So what we did when the time came, we drafted the amendment. Then Cleveland came back and said, no, so they drafted an amendment, and their amendment, which was much longer and had much more detail, and the requirements from us, the requirements they wanted from us were.
Does it say that we draft the amendment or they draft the
It
amendment?
just says it requires, I didn't think.
To the chair. Let me lay out the process that as it's written, agreed to in the agreement.
Okay.
So, as we stated earlier, after the transition period, 12 months after that, the county can come forward, provide documentation to say our costs have increased by at least 2%. Here's our documentation. The city then has, 90 days. Oh, and it would go into effect 90 days thereafter. On day 90, the city can respond and they can request additional documentation to show that these costs are directly related to their prisoners. And in 2019, when we went through this process, the City of Cleveland pushed back. They asked for additional documentation, wanted us to show that all the extra costs that the county was experienced at the jail was directly related to their prisoners. And Donna, she provided probably every scrap of paper we have over the jail to the City of Cleveland. If they still dispute after, providing that additional documentation, the city can provide their own assessment. If we don't agree with that, we can go through the dispute resolution process in the contract, which states that the city safety director and the executive at the county or their designees meet. They have so many days to meet, come to an agreement. If they don't agree, they have about 60 days to go to mediation. If they don't agree with what the mediator says there, they can have 60 days to go to arbitration. And I was looking up all the dates and the days that you have for each of these steps, and it can be up to a year to go through that entire process.
This contract.
Great question. This was prior to my starting here at the county, but my understanding is it was multiple drafts back and forth between the city and the county.
Well, where are we at today? That would take us, I guess, to 2020 to be done with all that rigmarole?
For the first,
Would have went into effect.
would have went into effect for 2020. So we'd have to repeat this process for 21, 22, every year going forward.
Why didn't we pursue this on the proper timeline to follow what you were saying we had to follow? Where'd the ball get, or was the ball dropped?
So the original process went through in 2019. We reached a resolution to get the 2%. COVID came, kind of threw everybody out. But then as far as what happened after that, I don't have that information, but maybe.
So again, when we started to revisit this, the first, an amendment was required. So Jonathan drafted it and said, because we knew the first 2% could not go into effect because of the way the original contract read, it couldn't go into effect until 2020. So when he drafted the amendment in 21, he had the effective date January of 2020. And we figured, okay, it's going to Cleveland, they're going to sign it, send it back. To our surprise, they didn't sign it. They sent back their version of the amendment. And their version.
Which is outside the four corners of
the contract. I don't, the original doesn't say who drafts the amendment. My understanding on the original contract, Cleveland drafted it. That was my understanding, that they, excuse me, they drafted it, at least drafted the majority of it.
I heard a rumor back in the day that the administration did allow that, which caught us by surprise, but our law director okayed it, and I suspect our law director was part and parcel of that. Where that takes us, I don't know. But where are we at today?
So this amendment that they sent us, what we did, the amendment, and I sent a copy to Trevor for your viewing, because the demands that the city of Cleveland is making in order to implement this 2% would require another full-time position. I mean, it's almost like an audit of the Cleveland city prisoners annually every year. And so we actually brought somebody else on board to maybe handle this. But we're still, so what we did is we took their drafted amendment, and then Rhonda had some suggestions, the sheriff did, law department did, and we then did another draft, and we have since sent that back to them and have not heard back from them.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Do you mind if I just intervene? This sounds ridiculous.
It is.
Okay,
It is.
so.
It is. I
Okay,
agree.
but what, if there's no deal, then they're going to have to find it somehow to deal with their responsibility, which no longer will be ours if we don't have a contract. They'll have to take them back.
No, the
and-
contract though the original has no term on it.
I thought there's an out.
The only, go ahead, the only.
It's very limited. For there to be a termination, there has to be, well, either a long-standing breach, or both parties have to agree and enter into a transition period to have it transition back.
Okay,
to-
so that's right.
Yeah.
No apparent breach. Yeah,
If there is an apparent breach and we have to point it out to them and then give them 90 days to correct it. So, and again, I don't want to talk about this publicly too much, but I don't know if you recall how this whole thing was kind of backdoored unbeknownst to many of us. But again, I don't want to go.
I do recall vividly
I
the
know.
argument over the actual cost of a prisoner, which, now again, I may be wrong here, but they came in initially arguing 69 and we were at 100 and something. Somehow we got to 99 And again, this was upstairs doing that, not us. We were just questioning it. And Greenspan was here, who was our numbers guy. And I remember the law director from Cleveland and some other people here getting a little bit perturbed that we were trying to figure this thing out and what a great deal this was for us. And now I'm hearing from City Hall is we're ripping them off and we should prove this and that. Let me ask you this. What's, what are we paying per prisoner per day? And give me the difference between a county prisoner and a city prisoner. Is there a noticeable difference?
In terms of the inmate per diem rate, I can't differentiate between the county and the city. What I do is I basically take all jail costs,
Right.
and the ADP, and I have one number. As of right now, this year,
Right.
I have $165 per inmate per day.
And they're paying 99.
Yep.
And they
Yes.
want an audit of every one of their prisoners who arguably and publicly has been stated in the presence of people in this panel, that the sickest people in that jail are the Cleveland prisoners. So it could be argued that they're costing us even more money if indeed that's the way they want to go. It seems to me that this is a no-win situation. I honestly think I need to know who wrote this contract. I want the names of the people involved. I suspect we might have a problem there. It seems awfully one-sided. And when we were in this committee and debated this, they fought like crazy to keep that down and to consider the fact that we're spending $1.65 and they're at 99 and fighting a 2% increase. I think there comes a time where you have to just call it. And I'm not hearing for certain that we've gone through the entire process.
If you do recall, when this original got put into place, and once I was told that it was approved, I said, that's impossible, it's not even in the system yet, because all contracts, before they get to you guys, have to go through me, and I look for certain things, terms, out clauses, things like that. Well, it never came across my desk.
Could you remind us who the sheriff was at the time? One of the 8 or 9?
At the time, it was Sheriff Pinckney. So it never came across my desk. Once I was told it was approved, and I went and started reading it, that's when I started making as much noise as I possibly can, but it was approved at that time. It was a done deal. It was too late. Now, in my opinion, this wasn't vetted properly. We have a process here. And the process, here, let me give you an example. I couldn't imagine putting something into the system for, say, the Department of Public Works, and having somebody from the Department of Public Works come up here and present it like Ken did originally with this, and then having to go tell Mike Dever, hey, by the way, there's something, I put it in the system for you, it's gonna cost you $2 million a year. That to me is unfathomable. But that's what happened to us. This was put into the system by someone else, a whole other department, moved its way through the system. We found out after the fact. It was too late.
Well, looks like we need to do a little digging here. And
As an operational component to this, as we evaluate it, just remember, Cleveland can actually cite the vast majority of their inmates under state code. That's just an operational cost that, as we contemplate.
But again, I mean, if you're gonna be held hostage like that, then they might as well just fold the muni court. And that's a battle in Columbus, and I think that's a battle that the counties are gonna win.
I just want everyone to be aware of,
Right. Well, I'm not, you know what? I'm not gonna be held hostage. I don't think we should be held hostage to threats of, we can do this to hurt you, to force you to do that. If necessary, okay, we'll be the test case of fighting this. But we have to get to the bottom of how exactly what Donna was saying, who put it in the system, how it got there, we might have an invalid contract according to our rules. If it wasn't done properly, I don't care how long it's been sitting there. If it was invalid in today's date, the 20th of 2022, we have just discovered that this has not been done correctly. I think that's going to change some thoughts and some, but anyhow, I understand that. Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And a question and a comment. The question is, let's presume that we successfully navigate this process we're currently going through, and that 4 years from now or so, we have a new jail. My question is, would this agreement automatically transfer to the new jail, or at the time we open up a new jail, would this agreement be done and have to be renegotiated?
Through the chair, I looked through the agreement as I was sitting back there. It does specifically state the address of the current jail's location. I haven't done, or I don't believe anyone in my department's done any review into that specific question as to whether this would, if any new jail would automatically come under the umbrella of this agreement. But that is something we would definitely need to look into.
So I would ask that you make that review and let us know. And the second thing is just a comment that there are just numerous things, some of them quite significant, that just can't happen without the city and the county working together. And I would just suggest that the next time that one of these comes up, that the executive has to tell the mayor that that part of the deal has to be scrapping and redoing this agreement. It's just totally unworkable. It's not fair. It's not right. And we have a new administration over at the city. We're about to have a new administration at the county, and the city of Cleveland and the county have to work together, and we can't have things like this that are so unbalanced and out of line and just not allowed to be fixed.
Through the chair, under the previous sheriff, we went through the agreement and we put together an agreement where it would have a 5-year renewal term. It would, as opposed to going through this process of increasing the cost every year, we would do it once every 5 years to kind of lower the administrative burden, but have a 5-year renewal where this is going before you, this is going before city council every 5 years to see, is this still what both parties want? And we can renew the agreement every 5 years as opposed to having an unlimited term. That was sent, I want to say I sent that over to the city November of last year, so obviously the city of Cleveland was going through an election at that time. And now that we have a new sheriff, we have given it to the amendment to him to look for anything that he might want to add, and he's reviewing that currently. And once he's done that review, I want to send that back over to see if we can make this agreement a little bit more reasonable.
Do we
Mr.
have
Chairman.
a number of, what, an average ballpark of how many Cleveland prisoners daily?
On average, the average daily population for the city of Cleveland is, this year so far, it's 61. Last year it was 69. So that's how many we house daily for the city of
Did
Cleveland.
we do a calculation between the 99 and the 165?
So this year to date, at the 99, they've been billed through July, and they've paid 1.2 million. If we had been getting the 2 every year, they'd be up to 105 right now, 105.06 at the 2% every year.
But at the 165, which is where it should be.
So if they would have paid us with the 2%, they would have paid us 1.3. However, what our costs were this year so far was 2.1. So far, we have, in my calculations, have lost $852,000, and I'm projecting the loss to be 1.4 by the end of the year.
So it's
That's
safe-
this year.
It's safe to say that around $1 million a year we lose, or it could be lower, it could be higher.
Like I said, we started billing in 19 because 18, we had the 9-month transition period. So that, but according to projected, let me see right here, actual cost. So I'm showing from 19 through 22, I'm it's going to be about $5 million loss from our actual costs.
Anybody have anything further? Are they up to date on their pay?
Pardon me?
We have a problem with,
Oh, no, yeah, they're up to date. They're, you mean them paying us?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were behind a couple of months, but then we sent them an email, and then they sent us one check, and it had like several months on there, so they are up to date.
okay.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman? I have a question on another topic when it's appropriate. It's for the sheriff, but not in relation to the,
Go ahead. Well, if you could, Sheriff, if you come up, let's find out who wrote the contract. Let's get at least an understanding of whose fingerprints were on this and who did what. Because it's still, it's rather foggy in my brain as to, I remember the debate between the, whatever, 69, 79, 99, and at that time, I think the average we thought was 121. But if we can just find out how it started, where it went, who was on it, I really want to know who put this in the system. Because it sounds to me like there was some shenanigans potentially. So if you could do that, and we'll bring it back, but when you get that, if you could share it, we'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Miller asked you to
Mr. Chairman, to the sheriff, a little over a week ago, our office participated in a meeting with you and some of your staff around along with the people who run the voter registration and absent voting process. And for the benefit of the committee, we had a program where volunteers would go into the jail and assist the inmates who were eligible to vote, to assist them in participating in the process. But that program was scaled back due to COVID, and so that it was the in-person aspect was suspended, and the subject of the meeting was to see if we could return to an in-person process. And we've gotten to the point where if we're going to do anything this year, it would have to be done very soon. So I was wondering if you could give us an update as to whether your office has made a decision on that.
Yes, we assigned that to Warden Henry, and I'm going to ask Rhonda Gibson to provide an overview of where it stands at now.
So, a few weeks ago, we had Disability Rights Ohio, who came in for an inmate voting project, and they were given the opportunity to meet with inmates who requested to do so, and that happened over a period of a day. And I actually just got an email from them this week saying how smooth the process was, and we're very appreciative of that opportunity. There was a meeting that was held with Nova, and Sheriff and I just talked about that yesterday, and I'm going to meet with the warden to see what we can put in place for Nova, similar to what we did for Disability Rights Ohio.
And how soon can we put that in place?
I don't think it will take very long, Councilman. I just need to speak with the warden to discuss the process and get it deployed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hearing nothing further, thank you very much. We'll have you back soon enough. Is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none, we're adjourned.